Welcome to the Mason Duchatschek Show. This episode is brought to you by Workforce Alchemy, helping leaders improve hiring, engagement, and retention while uncovering people-related profit leaks hidden in everyday operations. Today's guest works at the intersection of leadership, brand, and trust, where many business owners struggle to clearly articulate who they are and why anyone should care. Justin Ricklefs is the founder of Guild Collective and the author of the new book, Give a Damn. Through his work, he helps organizations clarify their identity, sharpen their message, and build meaningful connections with customers, partners, and communities in a crowded and noisy world. His background includes creative leadership and relationship-driven work, including experience building partnerships in a professional sports organization where alignment and trust were non-negotiable. What makes Justin's perspective valuable for business owners and CEOs is that he understands how clarity of story and intention directly impacts growth, partnerships, and long-term relevance. This conversation is about how leaders show up, how they communicate, what they do and why it matters, and how it shapes the results that they get. Justin, I'm so happy to have you on the show. Welcome.
Man, Mason, it's I was like, yeah, that sounds interesting. I appreciate it and I resonate with it, and I think it's a timely topic. I definitely don't have all the answers, but I love part of having this conversation because it is one that leaders, CEOs, business owners, marketing leads are having in the real world, and it's just a delight and a pleasure to be with you, man.
I think story cuts through noise like a hot knife through butter. And there's so much noise out there. I think businesses are starving for ways to become radically relevant, to borrow a phrase from Bill Cates, who I had on a few weeks ago.
Love that
They're
phrase.
struggling for how do you do that? So I am very invested in hearing what you have to say, and I hope everyone else is looking forward to it as much as I am.
Yeah, well, I didn't invent story. I'm not the only one who talks about story. Our business at Guild is not the only ones who build frameworks around brand story. In fact, part of the reason I started Guild Collective back in the day was because of Donald Miller's work on story brand. And in my job, my corporate job at the time, we were selling into mid-market to Fortune 50 companies, big businesses with big marketing budgets, and they kept coming back to the team and in our group and asking for help to literally help us tell our story. And I was like, man, I don't understand. And I was like tinkering around on the internet, writing words about family and business and sales and just weird stuff personally, and telling stories. And there were these little fragments of community and connection that started to form, nothing significant. But I was watching what was taking place, what I would call like in this story forum. And then I'm in this corporate forum where it's all like head. And I'm like, these businesses need to inject some heart into the stuff they're doing and quit talking about themselves as much. And fundamentally, I mean, story is the oldest sales trick in the book. And it's not a trick. It's a way, it's a practice. We don't sit around campfires and talk about facts and figures. We sit around campfires and we tell stories. And that's the bridge to human connection. So yeah, we've developed our own version of how to help a company clarify and connect and be creative in the way they tell that story. But ultimately, that strategic framing is the heartbeat of the business that the internal audience first believes and knows and feels and experiences and understands, and then ultimately gets manifested into the external experience where you build that, where the heart connects to the other heart of a human. So we call it human first brand building, and I can get super long-winded on it, but in a nutshell, that's how we see the world of branding and story.
So you just spoke about internally knowing what the story is. A lot of businesses struggle not because they lack capability, but because they lack clarity. From your
100%.
perspective, where does that lack of clarity usually begin?
Well, it's the number one piece of our step is to identify and diagnose internal brand health clarity, because we all are storytellers. That it's just fascinating how many different businesses, our own included, it's hard work, but you survey or you build a mosaic of perspectives of an internal team, and they don't know how to communicate what they do, who they do it for, why they exist, what the purpose is, what they're going after. And so you'll get a CEO that says one thing, a VP of product that says another thing, a VP of HR that says another thing, and the entry level first person, first job type person who has no idea what to say. And so everybody's just scrambling around trying to figure out, who is this place? And when there's confusion, Brene Brown talks about this, the lack of clarity is kind. The lack of clarity is unkind. And so when a business doesn't have clarity, we call it their heartbeat, on their brand heartbeat, that if that pulse isn't clear and strong, everything else is just confusing. And it's not that it's bad or wrong or off, but it's confusing. And if we are confused as humans, we just tune it out. Not because we think you're bad or not interesting. We have so much else competing for our attention and our affection, I would say, that if the brand isn't clear, then we instantly are fighting a huge uphill battle for attention, affection, adoration.
It's funny. I was in a conversation the other day with a person and we were talking about the concept of identity. And she said, when you know who you are, you know what to do. Because that limits your universe of possibilities, because you won't do things that are outside of your stated identity. They're just not options. So when you
That's
know
right.
who you are, you know what you'll do. And when you know what to do, then you can have what you want to have. And it made
Yes.
all the sense in the world. And I think you're really talking about that. And where our conversation was on personal development, you're really talking about that same thing for a company.
Yeah, and I think they're both really related. I think when an organization can help its team, I think culture is a byproduct. It's just like, it's as overused of a word as authenticity or vulnerability these days. It's like everybody's talking about like create culture. It's like, well, culture is the result. It's the byproduct. It's the outcome. And clarity of connection, creativity, and story is the play. Again, that's not fix the QuickBooks, right? If there's some fundamental issues in the finance department or on the recruiting team or whatever else, this isn't. But it's this missing gap in the market. Lots of companies have really clear vision statements, mission statements, values. They've got stuff hanging on the wall. They've got an onboarding kit, and then they walk into the real world meetings with clients, and they have no idea how to communicate about what they do, why they exist, who they exist for, what happens when you engage in that business. And so the energy is just disconnected. It doesn't beat clearly and strongly. And so yeah, that piece for us is like, it always, the businesses who are winning today have really clear and compelling energy sources inside the organization. You can't not anymore. You can't market your way to a healthy business. You can't buy enough billboards, enough TV spots, enough SEO if that internal clarity of story isn't strong and frankly simple. Then it just disconnects and starts.
So this is something, obviously there are leaders who know their business inside and out. Why do you think it's so difficult for some of them to come up with the clarity that is obviously needed?
I mean, I think context matters, of course. So there's a lot of variance to that, but I think we overemphasize complexity and we chase these, things that make us either feel smart or look smart or sound hard. And so use a very obvious example. Chick-fil-A has built a business with a 16-year-old as their frontline team member, which is a risky business move. And they're only open 6 out of the 7 days of the week. But you go to any Chick-fil-A across the country, and if that 16-year-old doesn't approach you, ask for your name, and then after the exchange, after the transaction, if they don't, when the purchaser says thank you, if they don't say my pleasure, you're instantly like, this person should get fired because they don't live into the brand heartbeat, right? It's a jarring, and that's a simple phrase. They didn't make up that phrase. They weren't the first ones to ever say it, but they took 3 years to build that fabric internally. That's their brand heartbeat. There's a bunch of other stories, but I'll use one real example in kind of Main Street. We work in a company called Central Bank of Kansas City, and their brand heartbeat, after a lot of work, we got distilled down into, they are champions of possibility. That's their whole, and it's like, was that a vision statement or purpose? It's like, it doesn't matter. It's their heartbeat. It's the heartbeat of why they do what they do. And then they've built entire internal messaging programs around, how do we become better at being champions of possibility. And for them, it's about people, purpose, and possibility. And so again, but that simple framing is difficult because you're always running so fast, you're chasing stuff, and you're like, oh, this next thing or this EOS model or this whatever else, this will solve all the problems. And meanwhile, the team is just begging for like, who are we? Again, it's most basic level, like, who are we? Who do we serve? And why does this matter? And when that stuff starts to get clarified, it's not magic, it's not potion, but when it starts to get clarified and the heart does beat pretty regularly and strongly, it does set a standard. It elevates the energy. It gets people who aren't on that same wavelength a very obvious distinction between like, so leaders can start having tough conversations and root it back into a heartbeat principle, not like a, shamey job performance thing. And so anyway, I just think the simplicity is actually very difficult, but that's what we crave, because as storytellers you want something that is going to be true if you're the accounting manager, or if you're the HR person, or if you're the CEO, or better yet, if you're the client who's experiencing that thing. How much goodwill does Chick-fil-A get just because we talk about them all the time? Everybody does, because it's like, it's a great client experience because it's rooted out of their brand heartbeat and how it shows up from the inside out.
I know there's people listening because I've thought this before, and knee-jerk reaction, like, oh, this is just a bunch of warm, fuzzy corporate speak babble.
That's right.
And it isn't, because when you get in your example, the Chick-fil-A,
That's
you've
right.
got a 16-year-old kid on the front line embodying the brand
The heartbeat.
story and embodying the
Yes.
brand image. When I come in contact with that 16-year-old, they are the company to me. I don't sit there
100%.
and say, hey, this 16-year-old kid that worked at Chick-fil-A wasn't motivated or wasn't competent or was a jerk.
Yep.
I say the company was.
100%.
The company, they're jerks. It's not the company. It's that one
100%.
person. That one person
Yes.
is a
That's the brand
reflection of that.
experience.
And
Absolutely.
as a consumer, I will tell my friends and family and anyone on the internet who will listen what I think of that company, when it isn't that company, it's that one individual who represents the company to me. So when
Yes.
there's congruence across the story and the identity, that matters a lot. And that's not just warm, fuzzy, fluffy corporate babble. That's frontline business 101.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I get it.
Yes. And Mason, the inverse of that's true. Like the 97 out of 100 experiences you have with Chick-fil-A frontline people leave you feeling a certain way. And to the positive, you feel you don't say this, but your body feels love. It feels accepted. It feels good. It feels pleasant. It feels awesome, enjoyable. And you're happy to give them $14 on Apple Pay for one single meal. Right. And so it is dwarfing their competitive set, and they're only open 6 days a week. They have higher per restaurant revenue, per restaurant profit, per restaurant team retention. It's a really smart business model. It's not just warm and fuzzy. Care is a competitive advantage. And I stole this line from John Hoffman, who runs the Chick-fil-A in Liberty, Missouri. And he recounts the story. I don't know if we get the quote exactly right, but he was Truett Cathy, the founder of Chick-fil-A, had some version of a story that said care and commerce can coexist. And it isn't.
Imagine that, a story, something I'll remember.
Totally.
Many CEOs default to tactics when growth slows. In your opinion, why is story and identity often the lever they overlook?
Well, I think, and it's hard because I think us included, you look for some, I don't know, easy or quick or non-difficult ways to grow. It's just human nature. We just slide into this like, well, can it be easy tomorrow? It's like, but the difficult work of, and the way I relate it to our own, the brand heartbeat that we talk about, to have a healthy heart. My dad had heart surgery. He's healthy and he's 84 and he's as ornery and vibrant as he's ever been, but he had heart surgery in 2016. But like, you don't go to the heart doctor because you think your pinky toe has fungus on it, or you can't feel your elbow has some issues. And that's what I think a lot of the tactic conversations end up becoming. They can become these like disconnected from the heart conversations that you think will produce quick, meaningful, sustainable, huge growth. And it's like, that's not really how it works. Like, what works is you get clarity on your heartbeat, you get build connections to your internal audience and your external audience, and then you creatively tell that story in a way that moves human emotion. And that work is heart level work. And it's not quick, but it does beat a strong heartbeat for a long period of time. And so I think when owners and CEOs, and again, I've been in this seat plenty, when you get afraid and you default to like quick fix, tactic, band-aid, emergency, toe surgery, as opposed to going deep breath. Who are we? Who do we serve? What are we building? And it, I'm mixing metaphors here, but in a lot of ways, you got to till up the soil and then pray for rain. You can't ultimately control the rain. But it is your responsibility to create those conditions as a leader where those seeds can take root when it does rain. And I think we're just so quick to want these like this kind of slot machine version of marketing that's like, yeah, can you go buy your way to some Google ads that create some short-term leads? Absolutely. Does that mean though that you've built a healthy brand that is vibrant and growing and connected? Like I would bet to say, to keep using the Chick-fil-A example, they don't run discounts. They don't run sales. Every once in a while, they'll give you like a free cup of coffee in your app or whatever, but they don't market their way towards health. Do they do marketing and advertising? But that it all is flowing out of this connective tissue of the heartbeat, not this duct tape version of, hey, we got to scramble for customers tomorrow.
One of the things that I think is so important about why this conversation matters is I remember when I'm totally dating myself. I sound like the old guy going, I remember back in the old day,
Same.
but
I feel like a Progressive commercial almost every day.
I remember when the big push was, well, if you want to get your business found, people don't go on the yellow pages anymore. They go to Google. And if you
Right.
want to get your business found, you have to get found on the first page of Google. So everybody optimizes their messages and their keyword research to appear at the top of Google. Great.
Yes.
Now there is a shift to AI. And AI is not
Huge.
recommending 10 of them in a category, and search is way different. It's not like I'm looking for XYZ service in this town.
That's right.
People are asking AI very different things, and AI may have one or two answers or one or two people they recommend or something like that. That's a that's a very different scenario and set of
Yes.
rules. And the target to be the one that AI talks about, that's a very, very small target. There's not room for everybody there. I mean, AI is not going to say, oh, here's 150 different companies. Here's one. It's not going to happen, or at least I don't see it happening anytime soon. But what will people do? If they remember your brand or they've heard your brand or they feel good about your brand, they will go look for that directly.
That's right. Yes. Yes.
That's the antidote, if you ask me, for the near future of marketing. And I think that's why branding is so important. And the story is so important because it tells people what to expect and gives them a sense of certainty and a feeling that you're going to
Yes.
deliver on that sense of certainty. And that is something that will stick in their mind and that they will tell others and that people will look for directly.
Yes.
And I think that is the workaround by having your marketing shut down by AI who doesn't know you exist.
Totally. It's just it's a flimsy proposition to base the growth of your company on whatever tactic is that moment in time's trend. AI has a huge seat at the table, and we have to be mindful of it. We have to be aware of it. We have to be curious about it. And depending on who you are, you need to embrace it or not. Okay, so that's not that debate. So we're not anti-AI in our business.
No, not at all.
We're pro human connection.
Yes.
And the businesses that are building human connection with the people who work in their business, simple stuff. One of our biggest clients, they did this huge employee opinion survey, thousands of employees. The number one result, they surveyed every single one of their employees. The number one distilled result was, I want my supervisor to know my first name. Period. Okay? Human first brand building is required work, I'd argue, especially if you're trying to not be in this noisy onslaught of like, well, we got to like slide all of our Google dollars to AI now. It's like, yeah, that you can buy your way to relevance there for sure. But does it fundamentally beat in a systematic, clear, healthy way that flows from the inside out. You can just tell a healthy human when you look at them. You don't talk about their heart, but you can see them. Like you went on a run today, and it's like, yeah, bro, that heart was beating, and you did work. It wasn't easy, but was it rewarding? Of course it was. Like, and you're in Florida, so I'm slightly jealous.
So, what if you or your business has a great story? And I know there are businesses out there that can relate to this, where you feel like a screaming mute. You have all of this story to tell. It's an amazing story. It's value. It's all this stuff, but you can't get anyone to hear you. How do you break through?
I think, Mason, the easiest way to think about that is, and this is back to Donald Miller's story brand framework, is most businesses, and it's really not their fault because they're doing their best and they do have a story to tell. So they think the way to it is to scream louder for attention. But the signal in a super noisy world are the companies and leaders, therefore, who aren't vying for attention by screaming, but they're really quietly and subtly positioning someone other than their brand as the hero of the story.
Can you expound on
And
that
yeah,
or give me an
so
example?
like an example is, I bet if you looked at 100 small business websites, 90 will be littered with words that were written about the business who's selling the thing. We did this. We started here. My grandpa, I'm third generation company. We have all this stuff. We're like pushing products and services. But the prospect or the customer who's reading that website, as one example, is never spoken to. It doesn't say, we built this for you so that your life gets easier. And so this real simple, it's hard work because people don't do it very well. But the businesses use lots of language like we and us. Okay. They don't use much language of you and your. And it's quite simply like you have the business is the guide in the story. They're not the hero of the story. The customer is the hero in the story. And so if we don't fundamentally know what the customer wants and what pain they're experiencing before they encounter our thing, whether it's marketing or leadership or insurance or whatever, and then that transformational path we take them on so that their life gets better and the pain goes down, that is the journey. And we as companies, it's like, I'm not a hunter, but if you're looking for a big buck in the woods through binoculars, and it's almost like we're staring at these binoculars out the wrong way, and you're like, where are the damn deer? And then someone comes and they flip the binoculars around and you're like, oh, yo, there it is. Because we've been looking at the wrong side. And so no one shows up at a cocktail party. Well, if they
That's
do, they're
another good
really
story, by the way. Just letting you know that wasn't lost on me.
good. But like nobody shows up at a cocktail party and just starts blabbing about themselves all the time. And if they do, you don't listen to them for very long because it's annoying. But the ones that show up and they're like, man, Mason, like I saw your Garmin watch. You a runner? And you're like, yeah, I ran today actually 4.3 miles. It was my personal best. I'm trying to, run a marathon, whatever. And then you start digging in. And as quote unquote marketers, we're just terrible at that. We just show up and say, we built this thing. It's really kick ass. You should buy it. And everybody on the other end of the thing is like, I don't know if I want to buy one of those things. Instead of going, hey man, you've got this pain or this problem in your life. We understand it. We've been there too. And here's what clients like you have experienced when they walked this road. They lost weight, they made more money, their relationships got stronger, their life was easier. Like those are the companies that are crushing it, are people who are like overtly connected to the human experience.
So I think you're getting right on some touchy subjects, which I love because I have talked to people. It's a thing where they see competitors in their industry doing ridiculous stuff, embarrassing, what I would consider, and some of them consider embarrassing stuff to get attention because they figure, well, if we can't get their prospects' attention, they're not going to listen to our story anyway. And they do. And the people that I know are like, I would never, nor would any of the people in my group do something so ridiculous or desperate as to do stuff like that to get
Yes.
attention. Yet they're still frustrated because, again, their prospects and their customers are paying attention to that nonsense. And then they really do struggle with, how do we get attention for the right reasons? I mean, yes, once you got their attention, you can hook them into a conversation and the things that you're talking about. But do you have any tips or guidance to someone who's sitting there like that saying, I'm not going to do any of that nonsense to get attention. I am true to my identity, to my core, to our values, and we don't act like that. That's not what we operate. We are focused on our customers and whatnot. But when they're mired in the muck of their
Yes.
industry and not getting noticed, what, if any, thoughts do you have for them?
Well, Mason, I think it's a real life. Like I think business owners are fighting this fight every day, and one of them is, do you know the honest answer to the question of, do the people who work here love working here? Got to start there, because your team is the manifestation of the brand, no matter how you slice it, and whatever technology you're involved in, or whatever EOS plan you have. If your team does not love working there, if there's one person or 100 people or a million people, it doesn't matter. If they don't energetically come to life working there, that's problem one. Problem two is, sometimes we chase new customers while we haven't quite delighted the ones we have right now. And I think delight is this word we don't talk about a lot in the like corporate sense. Back to the Chick-fil-A example, like, you don't drive through and say, that was delightful. You don't say that, but that's what you feel, right?
Right.
And so I think if we are on this crusade of, and we got to take our own medicine here. We had some tough client feedback today, and I'm like, good night. I'm so sorry that experience for you didn't delight you. It was frustrating for you. And what happens as storytellers, back to story, is in the absence of clarity, the receiver of the story will fill in the gaps, and most likely it's not good stuff, right? So if I'm a client of Mason's and I'm sending
That's a
Mason a
mic
couple
drop
emails,
moment right there.
but it's true.
It is.
It's true. And it's always bad news. Like, we just tell ourselves bad, fearful stories because we're human beings, and we're like at our core, like trying to stay alive, right? We're trying to survive. And so if I'm emailing Mason and then I text him and then and for 3 days I don't hear back from him, I'm like, Mason hates us. It's just what happens. And Mason might be, hey, I went through something really difficult. I've been unavailable. My cell phone fell in the ocean while I was running, whatever. Like, there's a whole other side of the story. But as the customer, if I don't feel delight, then I start to fill in my own gaps of stories. And so that's why it's really important again, nobody's going to be perfect on this stuff, but if the brand can be consistent and
So let
clear.
make sure I'm so one of the what I'm hearing as one of your answers to the question I ask is that instead of focusing on getting into the rat race with everyone else trying to compete for attention that isn't true to who you are and congruent with your brand identity and story, you're saying just go delight the customers you have and get them telling your story for you.
Totally. It's our number one recommendation every single client engagement is, hey, stack ranked priorities for your growth strategy are delighting your current clients, because they, in whatever industry it's in, they will be your best storytellers. Either way, actually, if they hate the experience or love the experience or whatever version in between, they're going to talk about it. And they're going to tell their friends in the country club or at the grocery store or in the neighborhood check or picking up their kids from school. They're going to talk about this thing, this experience, because we that's what we do. We tell stories about the stuff we do. And you're either gonna be, holy smokes, this thing that I went to, this boot camp, there's super connected people and the high energy was great and I feel better about my life. Or I showed up and I felt out of place and weird, and people like me didn't go there and they took my money and I felt terrible about it. The customer's going to tell the story anyway, so let's help them shape that. And that concentric circle will it always does. It ripples out one way or the other.
So at the risk of using one of those overly used buzzwords lately, authenticity, what role does leadership authenticity play in whether a brand feels believable or whether it's performative?
I don't know the way specifically to articulate this, but you feel it.
Fair
You
enough.
just feel it. You just feel it. Like, you feel the energy when you walk into a stuffy cubicle factory and you're just like, people don't like working here. You just feel it. Or if you go I'm in a really cool client place right now, big business. lots of people, and their energy feels different. They were warm, they were helpful, they were thoughtful, they went to the client, they're asking questions, they're curious, they're caring, and you feel different about it when you experience a brand like that.
So, how do I want to phrase this question? How should leaders think about storytelling as a strategic discipline and not just a marketing function?
I think if leaders don't embrace the art and the science of storytelling, the stories will get told for them. And so it is a practice, it is a mindset, it is discipline to get, first of all, clear, and then second of all, connected to the humans who work at the place and buy from the place. And it's not, of course, that simple or black and white. But that storytelling muscle is developable, if I could say it that way. And lots of our clients, at least, don't get into the thing they're building because they inherently wanted to tell the story about it. They had a specific thing they wanted to build, make, manufacture, etc. But now that's table stakes. Like, to have a awesome product is now like base level, right? And so for the brands who are evangelizing those stories, those are the ones that are creating lots of good in the world, and therefore lots of commercial benefit.
So, I'm going to throw something out for your feedback because it's an internal dilemma that I've weighed both sides of. I hear some people say prospects have the attention span of a gnat, or customers have the attention span of a gnat. They're so distracted by so many things and they're overwhelmed, and they are. How can you get people to listen to a whole bunch of stuff if you can't be super concise and dead on quickly? And I've asked people that question, and the answer that they've given me is just don't write boring stuff. Don't create boring stories. Make sure it's
100%.
worthy of their time, because people will sit down and watch a 2-hour movie
Yeah,
if
that's right.
it's done well.
Or a 16-hour Netflix series, like eight. Like, we watched 20 hours of Stranger Things in the fall with our family because it's like, do better. That's my it's like,
Okay,
write better stories.
that's kind of
Yeah,
the
and
conclusion I'm coming to is just don't be boring. Make it, for lack of a better word, authentic, real, interesting, and compelling.
yeah, and that's why for us it comes down to those three essentials, which is it clear? Is it connected to the human who's receiving the story in one form or fashion? And is it creative? Is it actually not creative in the is it cute sense? Okay, a different conversation. Is it creative in a emotionally charged sense? Does it make somebody feel a certain way? That's why brands who are building these like 3-minute commercials that are, it's like an old Chevy Suburban going through some farm in Iowa, right? And it's like this big long, it's 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 evoking emotion in the heart. It's not, hey, we've built Suburbans for 60 years and here's all the ways that we've changed the model and here's how the price has increased and the cost of steel has gone up. It's not that. It's like, bring us into something that makes us feel. And the second, that's the signal. If the human feels something, they will start to care. But if they know you're performing for attention or applause, or you're pushing some terrible sale down their throat, that's why they don't pay attention, because it's
True.
like it doesn't connect to them. And it is hard work to connect to a human.
No, it's 100% agreed. I know you've got a whole bunch of different advice you could offer, years of experience, but if you could only offer business owners one piece of advice, what's the most important piece of advice you could offer them?
It's related. It's one coin, two sides. Okay. So first side of the coin would be to ask every single team member who works there, what do you love about this place? And then you could ask the follow up of like, what don't you love? It's a brave, courageous stance, because they'll tell you the truth if they believe that you actually want to hear the truth. And then the flip of the coin, because of the heartbeat, the flip of the coin is asking your most loyal customers, clients, partners, what do you love about the experience working with us? And those are the clues to the story. Those are the semblance. Like, you can say whatever you want in a boardroom, but if you ask the real humans who make up these exchanges what the value is, they'll tell you. But lots of leaders don't want to know the truth because they just want to, like, we have a strategic plan and this is what it says we're going to do, and like,
You're
and
right.
that's why it's like, well, we have an open door policy here. Well, what's the problem? Nobody ever comes into the open door because they're terrified of you, because you actually don't want their feedback. You don't want their perspective. So I think the answers are,
If
and
you
we
want their
say this.
opinion, if I want your opinion, I'll give it to you.
That's right. And that's why we tell every single client engagement, we like the answers are already within. They're already right there at the table. They already know. And yeah, we do the work to help them distill it and get clear and tight on it. But none of this is like made up. And that's why in the fact that it is authentic because it's truly them, but they haven't had the framing or the expertise to help them clarify it in a way that's compelling and generative.
Well, I have enjoyed every minute of our conversation. I hope people listening and watching have too. So tell those of us people who are listening or watching that want to know more about you, the work you do, your new book, what's the best way for them to learn more about you, your company, your book, interact with you? How should they connect?
Yeah, I mean, work-wise, Guild Collective, you just Google that, you'll find our website. My most active place where I write things on the internet is LinkedIn, so you can just search my name on LinkedIn. I try to write 4 or 5 times a day, sometimes not a day, a week, not a day. That would be really annoying for everybody.
That's a lot of
And
story.
then yeah, and then I did write this 218-page book called Give a Damn,
Put it
and
up screen so everyone can see that.
and
Go
this is
ahead
the
and show it.
author's
There you
copy.
go.
This is the author's copy, so it's still getting marked up. We're at the final stages here, but it will be released on February 18th, and it's a collection of stories and lived experience, and it's a messy, organic book that's rooted in my own journey, where I believe that I believe that at its core, care can be a competitive advantage. And so we've used this phrase, give a damn. I've used it in my professional career, and we've used it at Guild for a long time. And when pushed to give a definition, to give a damn, to tell the story in a simple way, I was like, okay, ultimately it's how can a leader apply effort and attitude, so two fuel sources, effort and attitude, towards growing in their curiosity, clarity, compassion, and consistency. And again, is it a perfect formula? Is it like highly academic research? No, it's a real life collection of other builders and business owners who we've been in relationship with, who have used, because I think at its core, we each, as leaders, we have like a match in our hand, and there's a whole story about the match. And we have the ability to take that match and cause damage to another with that flame, or do good and light someone else's match and help spread the fire and build the fire of good. And so again, it's not always that black and white, and sometimes by the day I'm like, oh damn, I just burned that dude with that feedback, I didn't do a great job of that. But the book is about, this tribe of give a dammers who are out here trying to use care as a competitive advantage, not so that it's just cute, but so that we grow healthy, strong businesses that lead to flourishing. I believe that. I believe that when business people are healthy, they have huge influence, and they're able to create work, jobs, influence, connections, community, that lead to people not waking up on Monday going, I hate this place.
Who's your ideal audience? Who's it for? Who'd you write it for?
If will you give me 3 seconds to flip to a
Absolutely.
page? Okay. I wrote it. Oh, dang it. This is the copy. This is the wrong copy. Give me 2 seconds. There's a lot of what I find personally important in the book. The first is the dedication, which is to my wife, because she is just the greatest of all time. So that's the two, and you'll have to read that on your own. But the four, so the very first page talks about to Brooke, and then the next page is for, and this is the answer to your question, Mason. This is for the leaders who know that it costs $0 to give a damn, that it doesn't require a certain degree, and it's not reserved for a certain title, office size, age, or experience. The world gets better when you give a damn. That's who it's for. It's for the leaders who, I believe leadership's not a title, it's a way, it's an invitation, it's a practice. And so I think an 18-year-old intern can be a leader. I think a 60-year-old CEO can not be a leader. I think there's a lot of space for leadership and its definition to be evolved into this. It's a practice, it's a mindset, it's not a position.
I love it. And those are my favorite types of books anyway, because when people try to copy tactics like, well, the author said this, so I'm going to do that exactly. I don't get that as much from it. I reflect one of my favorite books of all, years ago, in 2003, I did my first Ironman triathlon, and I read a book that was referred to me called Becoming an Ironman. And all it
Mm,
was a collection of short stories from
yes.
people who did their first Ironman. Some of them were professional triathletes. Some of them were overweight frat boys that were 50
Yep.
pounds too
Boozed out.
heavy
Yep.
and decided
Yep.
they wanted to change their life. And what was their race like? Some of them people blew through it and had an amazing day and set PRs. Some of them suffered and were miserable and gutted it out somehow. And when I read that whole book, my takeaways weren't, oh, here's how I need to do my nutrition, or here's how I need to do pacing, or it wasn't like that. I left with a
Yes.
sense of confidence that no matter what happens, that as long as I can make relentless forward progress, I
Yes.
can finish. If I can walk, I can finish. And when I learned vicariously through all those
Mm,
other people's experience, then it gave me a sense of certainty that there's almost
mm.
nothing that can happen that I can't get through. And I have some ideas on how to handle that, even though I wasn't that experienced. That
That's right.
that book saved me years of hard work
Yes.
and perhaps even a do not finish at some point in time, because one of them I really did struggle. It was super hot and
Mm,
I had a
mm,
rough day, but
mm.
I could reflect on the lessons I learned in that book where someone shared lived experience,
Yes.
and that's
Yes.
what it took to get me through. So I'm certain that the book that you've written and the way you've written it is going to help some business owner somewhere that is doing everything they can and it's not enough. And I'm hoping
Yeah.
that they can learn vicariously through the experiences that you were gutsy enough to share, because I'm sure it's not
Yeah.
all roses and
Boy.
sunshine. I'm sure there's some
Boy.
tough gut check
Yeah. I
moments.
mean, there's a bunch of stories about me blowing it, including like early days, knowing I needed to fire a guy. Tried to fire him on Friday. He essentially talked me into letting him stay till Monday. And I was like, "Oh, yeah, okay, like, I'm so sorry." Like, "Oh, shoot." And then Monday comes, like, it's terrible, horrible experience, horrible leadership. And yeah, the book it's not like it's not a bash me book by any means, but it is a vulnerable view of like, this isn't some squeaky clean framework. This is a way that leaders are out there doing their damnedest. That's what I'm just so encouraged when we meet new clients, prospects, people in the community building stuff. Like it's courageous, brave, crazy work to lead and build a thing. And they're to be commended and celebrated. And what's true is they need help understanding the impact they have on others, me included. I wrote this book every bit as much for me as anybody else.
It's first of all, thank you for doing that. Second of all, I have become an Alex Hormozy fan. I know some people love him, some don't. I happen to think he's full of wisdom and I appreciate him sharing it. And I've read his books. He always talks about get the lessons, not the scars. And that's one of the reasons I'm drawn to books like what you're describing, is because when you can share the lessons so that those of us reading don't have to get the
Yeah.
scars to still get the wisdom, that's a fair deal.
Yeah.
Hour or two
Yeah.
of my time
It's
versus what thousands of dollars of trial and error and years of hard work to figure out stuff that you've already learned that I could have learned if I would just paid attention.
Yeah, and where I'd extend his thinking is because it's yes and for sure. I actually think the scars tell the stories, and when it's a ridiculous thing that for $13 or $15 or $12 or whatever the amount of money is that you buy a book, you get to read somebody's scars, because you're right, those lessons that they endured are the teachers, and books are just a I hope books have this massive comeback because it's like it's a damn shame that people don't read more books. And you've written so many of them, which is amazing. I want to follow your footsteps. But it's kind of this articulated, crystallized thinking of it's just one big scar that gets to tell a story so that someone else may prevent some of those scars. I love how you frame that up.
So, hey, thank you so much. I've enjoyed every minute, and let's do this again sometime soon.
I would love it, Mason.
Thanks.